Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode, we're continuing with the book of Shmuel, chapters 19 through 21, landing on the Shabbat for Nissan 7, 5785, April 5th, 2025. It is the weekly portion for Vayikra, the beginning of the book of Leviticus. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started, as I mentioned, with chapter 19 of the book of Samuel 1, and we'll be doing so using the English translation on Chabad.org. You can follow along there if you'd like to read along. As always, I'd like to remind everybody I'm not a professional scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the scripture. Let's begin. Shmuel chapter 19, verse 1. And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, desired David very much. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father, seeks to put you to death. And now, beware now in the morning, and you shall remain in secret, and hide. And I shall come out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I shall speak on your behalf to my father. And if I see something, I shall tell you. And Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and he said to him, Let not the king sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds are very good toward you. And he put his life in his hand and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. You saw and rejoiced. Why then should you sin against innocent blood, to put David to death for no reason? And Saul listened to Jonathan's voice, and Saul swore, As the Lord lives, he will not be put to death. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was before him as yesterday and before. And there was war again, and David went out and battled the Philistines, and dealt a great blow upon them, and they fled from before him. And an evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, and he was sitting in his house, with his spear in his hand, and David was playing with his hand. And Saul attempted to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away from before Saul, and Saul drove the spear into the wall. But David fled and escaped on that night. And Saul sent messengers to David's house to guard him and to put him to death in the morning. And Michal his wife told David, saying, If you do not flee for your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death. And Michal let David down through the window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took the teraphim and put them into the bed, and she put a goat skin at its head and covered it with a garment. And Saul sent messengers to take David, and she said, He is ill. And Saul sent the messengers to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may put him to death. And the messengers came, and behold, the teraphim was in the bed, and the goatskin was at its head. And Saul said to Michal, Why have you thus deceived me? And you sent away my enemy so that he escaped? And Michal said to Saul, He said to me, Let me go. Why should I put you to death? Now David had fled and escaped, and he came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and stayed in Naioth. And it was related to Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David, and he saw the company of prophets prophesying, and Samuel was standing his head over them. And a spirit from God was upon Saul's messengers, and they too prophesied. And they told Saul, and he sent other messengers, and they too prophesied. And Saul continued to send third messengers, and they too prophesied. And he also went to Ramah, and when he came to the great pit, which is in Seku, and he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, at Naioth at Ramah. And he went there to Naioth and Ramah, and even upon him was a spirit from God, and he went along prophesying until he came to Naioth and Ramah. And he too stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and he fell naked all that day and all the night. Therefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? End of chapter 19. So here we have a continuation. The madness that has been overtaking Saul and makes him want to kill David is still afflicting him very much. Now Jonathan happens to have tremendous love for David, and so he speaks against the action. He says to David, Let me tell my father not to hurt you, and you can listen to our conversation, and you can go based on what you hear. So he tells Saul, as David's hiding in wait, And he says, don't hurt David. He hasn't done anything to you. He's only been good to you. And Saul swears, as the Lord lives, he says those exact words, right? He says, as the Lord lives, he will not be put to death. Now, this phrasing is important because basically Saul just made a swearing covenant of sorts, right? He swore that as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death. So whether or not Saul attempts to kill him is irrelevant. He will not be put to death. It just won't happen. So he has blessed David in security in doing so. Now, moving forward, it says that the spirit was once again, the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul. So he has been struck with madness and anguish again, and David is playing music as before, and he attempts to kill David with the spear. He misses, drives the spear into the wall. David slips away, and then Saul sends his guys after him to try to get him trapped at his house and kill him in the morning. His wife, Michal, who, remember, is Saul's daughter, she helps David to escape, tells him, if you don't leave now, you're dead tomorrow. So she helps him out. He escapes through the window, and then he flees. And the next morning, she plays a little trick. She sets up something in the bed to look like there's someone there, and she basically stalls and buys him time. Then it gets revealed that it wasn't really David, but just the equivalent of like putting a bunch of pillows under the blanket to make it look like there's a body. And so Saul asks his daughter, why have you thus deceived me? And you sent away my enemy so that he escaped? And she says, he said to me, let me go. Why should I put you to death? So in other words, she's saying that it was David's way of saving her life, and it makes it excusable. Why should I put you to death? In other words, David was clearly recognizing that Michal would have died in the struggle. So this was why this must have happened. In any case, we keep on moving along, and we flash forward a bit. He escapes to Samuel, and Samuel's in Ramah, and he tells him everything that's going on. And so word gets back to Saul that Samuel and David are together at Naioth and Ramah. And so now he sends messengers to go get David, and they arrive, and they see these prophets that are prophesying, and as Samuel is standing at the head of these prophets. And so the messengers suddenly, they receive like a spirit from God, and they start prophesying. So they receive like divine information. They're taken in the moment. And so they tell Saul this happened, and he's like, all right, fine, I got to send some different ones. So he sends like 3 different waves of messengers, and every time they get there, they get overtaken by God's message. So the prophesying stops them from being able to proceed. Finally, Saul himself goes, and he asks, where are they? And he gets there, and even he too gets afflicted by this spirit of prophecy. And so he's basically unable to act. And it says he too stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and he fell naked all that day and all the night. Therefore they say, is Saul also among the prophets? So again, like this moment, basically he lost his presence of being a king in this moment because he was so overtaken by the Spirit that he was essentially just as the prophets are. And so this, that's how I understand that phrasing. In any case, let's go ahead and jump on to chapter 20, verse 1 of the book of Samuel 1. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and he came and said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is my transgression, and what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life? And he said to him, far be it, you shall not die. My father will do nothing, either great or small, that he will not reveal to me. And why should my father conceal this thing from me? It is not true. And David swore further and said, your father knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he said, let not Jonathan know this, lest he become saddened. But indeed, as the Lord lives, and by the life of your soul, there is but a step between me and death. And Jonathan said to David, what your soul will say, I shall do for you. And David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I am accustomed to sit with the king to eat. And you shall let me go, that I may hide in the field until the evening of the 3rd day. If your father is mindful of me, you shall say, David took leave of me to hasten home to Bethlehem, his city, for it is the yearly sacrifice there for the whole family. If he says thus, good, then it is well with your bondsman. But if he becomes angry, know that the evil has been decided upon by him. And you shall do kindness with your bondsman, for into the covenant of the Lord have you brought your bondsman with you. And if there be guilt in me, put me to death yourself, for why should you bring me to your father? And Jonathan said, far be it from you, for if I know that the evil has been decided upon by my father to come upon you, would I not tell you that?" And David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me, or what your father will answer you harshly?" And Jonathan said to David, "Come, let us go out to the field." And both of them went out to the field. And Jonathan said to David, "By the Lord God of Israel, that I shall sound out my father at this time on the third morrow. And behold, if it is good for David, will I not send for you then and reveal it to you? So shall the Lord do to Jonathan, and more also. If it pleases my father to bring evil upon you, I shall reveal it to you. And I shall send you away, that you may go in peace. And may the Lord be with you as he was with my father. And I shall not ask of you if I am still alive. Will you not do kindness of the Lord with me, that I die not? And you shall not discontinue your kindness from my household forever, and not even when the Lord cuts off David's enemies, each man from upon the face of the earth." And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, and may the Lord demand it from the hand of David's enemies. And Jonathan continued to make David swear in his love for him, for he loved him the love of his soul. And Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be remembered, for your seat will be vacant. And for 3 days you shall hide very well, and you shall come to the place where you hid on the day of work, and you shall stay beside the traveler's stone. And I shall shoot 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I shall send the youth, saying, Go find the arrows. If I say to the youth, Behold, the arrows are on this side of you, take it and come, for it is well with you, and there is nothing the matter as the Lord lives. But if I say thus to the youth, Behold, the arrows are beyond you, go, for the Lord has sent you away. And concerning the matter which we have spoken, I and you, behold, the Lord is between me and you forever." And David hid in the field, and when it was the new moon, Saul sat down to the meal to eat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, upon the seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat down beside Saul, and David's place was vacant. And Saul did not say anything on that day, for he thought, It is an incident. He is not clean, for he is not clean. And it was on the morrow of the new moon, the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was vacant. And Saul said to Jonathan, his son, Why has not the son of Jesse come to the meal either yesterday or today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, Let me go away now, for we have a family sacrifice in the city. And he, my brother, commanded me. And now, if I have found favor in your eyes, let me slip away now and see my brothers. He therefore did not come to the king's table. And Saul's wrath was kindled against Jonathan, and he said to him, You son of a straying woman, deserving of punishment! Did I not know that you chose the son of Jesse to your shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For all the days that the son of Jesse is living on the earth, you and your kingdom will not be established. And now, send and take him to me, for he is condemned to death. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, Why should he be put to death? What has he done? And Saul cast the spear upon him to strike him, and Jonathan knew that it had been decided upon by his father to put David to death. And Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and he did not eat any food on the 2nd day of the new moon, for he was grieved concerning David, for his father had put him to shame. And it was in the morning that Jonathan went out at David's appointed time, and a small boy was with him. And he said to the boy, Run, find now the arrows which I shoot. The boy ran, and he shot the arrow to cause it to go beyond him. And the lad came up to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, and Jonathan called out after the lad and said, Isn't the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan called after the lad, Quickly, hasten, do not stand. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master. And the lad knew nothing, only Jonathan and David knew the matter. And Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy, and said to him, Go bring them to the city. The lad departed, and David arose from the place toward the south. And he fell upon his face to the ground 3 times, and prostrated himself 3 times. And they kissed one another, and wept one with the other, until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, and bear in mind that we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, May the Lord be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. End of chapter 20. So here we have the plot thickening. We hear that David escaped from Naioth to Ramah, and so on. And so David gets to Jonathan and says, "Why does your dad want to kill me? Why is he chasing after my life?" And Jonathan says, "What are you talking about? No, you're fine. My dad won't do anything to you. Why would he do something to you? And if he was going to do something to you, wouldn't he tell me? Of course he would tell me." And David swears and he says, "No, no, 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 no. I know that your dad understands the way that you feel about me. He knows how close we are. And so he's not going to tell you about it so that you'll be bothered. So I'm telling you, I'm in danger. I'm this close to being dead." And so Jonathan basically trusts him and he says, "What your soul will say, I shall do for you." And so he tells him that they come up with a plan. David's idea is that they're going to pretend that David left town, and they're going to tell Saul that he left town for this reason, which is to go participate in a feast back home. And if Saul is angry, then this will indicate that he actually is out to kill David. So this is the plan, and they basically start making all sorts of different promises and covenants with each other. So what happens here is the two of them, they come together and have this plan. He says, "What are you going to do if your dad is harsh? Like, what are you going to tell me? How are you going to tell me if the word is that I'm going to be condemned to death?" And so Jonathan tells him, "Here's the plan. I want you to hide for the next 3 days, and I'm going to shoot in 3 days from now 3 arrows. These 3 arrows will land over there. And if I say this, it means that my father is after you. And if I say that, it means that you're safe. So let's go ahead and go with that plan." But before this plan comes into action, Jonathan does something else that's huge. He makes David swear covenants with him. They swear on their love for one another, or at least the love he has for David. They swear before God, and the promises that they make are huge. So he says, this is the covenant that Jonathan makes. He swears that he will sound out his father at this time. So he's going to find out the information and reveal it to him. And he says, "So shall the Lord do to Jonathan and more also, if it pleases my father to bring evil upon you. I shall reveal it to you, and I shall send you away, that you may go in peace. And I shall not ask of you if I am still alive. Will you not do kindness to the Lord with me, that I die not?" So he's also telling him this: "You shall not discontinue your kindness from my household forever, and not even when the Lord cuts off David's enemies, each man from upon the face of the earth." And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, and may the Lord demand it from the hand of David's enemies. And Jonathan continued to make David swear in his love for him, for he loved him the love of his soul. And so they make this covenant. They make this deal. This is huge. This covenant is huge. I was reading this, and there are some things that are so important about this that it might seem strange, but Jonathan has done what is the single most important thing he could have possibly done for the house of Saul. Because Saul has lost the mandate of heaven already. He's a goner. He is condemned. He has made several mistakes. And there's another thing that's happened. Jonathan was also cursed by Saul when he ate the honey from the forest. So Jonathan is also now condemned. But Jonathan, because of his love for David and the house of David, he has formed a covenant with David. So even if Jonathan might be condemned and doomed and all these horrible things, it won't matter. Because the house of Jonathan, his family's house, will be loved by the house of David. He is securing the future of his family in making these covenants. And he's saying, I will deliver the information, and you, in exchange, you will not forget this bond that we have forever. Even when you claim justice and claim vengeance from your enemies, you will not forget that. So basically, he's acknowledging that this house of Saul is going to be among David's enemies. And so when he comes to collect all his dues, the house of Jonathan will not be among those who are among the enemies, even when he comes to collect all from those who gave evil to David. So Jonathan is so smart. He is so brilliant. He recognizes that David has this potential And I think he's also aware that his father has lost the mandate of heaven. He's seeing things manifest, and he is moving with the flow of destiny. Rather than getting all caught and bent out of shape over losing the kingdom, which would have been his, he instead is securing a future for the house of Jonathan, even if that house comes from Saul. Beautiful, brilliant. This is one of the best covenants in the history of trade covenant. This is a great deal for Jonathan. All he has to do is give some information, but he is saving the house of himself forever with David. So they make the promise, and as Saul goes to have dinner for the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, they're having the first feast, and day one, he doesn't show up, David doesn't show up, and Saul doesn't think much of it. He's like, oh, it's because he's impure, he's unclean, whatever. Next day, he shows up, or he doesn't show up again, and now Saul is like, where is this kid? And he asks Jonathan, and Jonathan says, oh, well, I told him he could leave town to go spend some time with his family because they have a family tradition. And Saul gets very angry at this and actually moves to attack Jonathan over this. And so this whole situation is so horrible, he realizes that his father really does plan to kill David, and he further emphasizes this. First off, Saul says this. He says, you son of a straying woman deserving of punishment, did I not know that you choose the son of Jesse to your shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For all the days that the son of Jesse is living on the earth, you and your kingdom will not be established. And now send and take him to me, for he is condemned to death. So this right here is huge. He's basically telling Jonathan, are you not aware that as long as David's alive, you will never be king? He needs to be killed, otherwise you won't be king. And he's calling Jonathan's mother a straying woman deserving of punishment. He basically said, you son of a whore. I mean, he really is. It's terrible. But nevertheless, he's calling him a traitor. And he's implying it's through his mother's side. You son of a straying woman deserving of punishment. This is the prince. Nevertheless, Jonathan maintains, what has he done wrong to you? And at this point, he understands, like, this is it. My father's lost it. He is enemy of David, and I have to go honor my end of the deal now. So he doesn't eat. He's so upset that he doesn't even eat from the feast. And he goes and he meets with David. He does the little trick. He shoots the arrows with a young boy attendant to go, okay, now go fetch the arrows. And he says the warning sign that says, my father wants to kill you, get out of here. And sure enough, that's what happens. He takes his weapons and he gives them to the boy. And he's like, all right, go ahead back to the town. And after the boy goes away, he meets up with David in secret, and the two of them basically greet each other and weep what will probably be for the last time, because they understand, like, this is really it. Like, this is happening. The reality is Saul is after David, and there's nothing that can be done. And so he tells him that, don't forget our covenant. So it says, David arose from a place toward the south, and he fell upon his face to the ground 3 times and prostrated himself 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept one with the other until David exceeded. So I think when it says David exceeded, I think it means he became inconsolable. So these two guys, like, they're best friends, and here they are. The situation is dire. Jonathan is honoring his deal, and he's honoring his loyalty to his brother David, his soul brother, and David is just completely beside himself. He prostrates himself and bows down, his face on the ground 3 times. I mean, this is not simply a matter of, like, grief. Like, he is showing his gratitude to Jonathan, and it says, they wept one with the other until David exceeded. So David was even more inconsolable than Jonathan. And Jonathan said to David, go in peace, bear in mind that we have sworn both of us in the names of the Lord, saying, may the Lord be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. So they have sealed their bloodlines forever in eternal bond. This is as close as it gets to the best case scenario for the house of Jonathan after Saul's many mistakes. But nevertheless, this is how they say goodbye. So this is huge. Again, these covenants, Jonathan is very smart, because if we think about the covenants that have been made, there are some things that have gone awry here in the past, right? When people forge covenants with each other, and it is even said, don't forge covenants. Like this is not good practice in general because they're binding. What I will point out, however, is that Saul did swear regarding David, and so he's already trying to break that. And now here these guys are swearing to one another. Very important, very huge. Here we have the end result that Jonathan has secured the safety of his bloodline, or at least his descendants and so on. Should they survive, they will be bound to David's forever. And that's good because the dynasty of David has been established, right? That is the future kingship. So a good deal. Let's go ahead and move on to the final chapter for today, chapter 21, verse 1 of book of Samuel 1. And he arose and went away, and Jonathan came to the city. And David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came trembling toward David and said, "Oh, why are you alone? No one with you." And David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king charged me with a matter, and said to me, Let no man know anything concerning the matter upon which I am sending you, and with which I have charged you. And I troubled the young men to advance to a hidden secret place. And now, what is there in your possession? 5 loaves of bread? Give them into my hands, or whatever is found." And the priest answered David and said, "There is no ordinary bread in my possession, but there is holy bread, if the young men have but kept themselves from women." And David answered the priest and said to him, "But women are withheld from us as of yesterday and the day before yesterday when I left, and the young men's garments are hallowed, and that is in a matter common, and even if today it would be hallowed in a vessel." And the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there, except the showbread, which was removed from before the Lord, to place warm bread on the day it was taken. And there was a man of Saul's servants on that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. And David said to Ahimelech, "And if there is here in your possession a spear or a sword, for neither my sword nor my weapons have I taken in my hand, for the king's business was urgent." And the priest said, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you slew in the valley of Terebinth, behold, it is wrapped in a garment behind the ephod. If you wish to take that for yourself, take it, for there is none beside it here." And David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." And David arose and fled on that day from before Saul, and he came to Achish the king of Gath. And the bondsmen of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Was it not at this one that they would sing out with musical instruments, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David took these words to heart, and became very much afraid of Achish the king of Gath. And he changed his speech before their eyes, and he feigned insanity before them. And he scribbled on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva run down upon his beard. And Achish said to his bondsmen, "Behold, you see a man who is mad. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack lunatics that you have brought this one to rave in my presence? Will this one come into my house?" End of chapter 21. So now we have the great escape. This is David's great plan to get on out of here. So it begins, he goes to the city in Nob, and he talks to the priest Ahimelech, and Ahimelech is confused seeing David by himself, and he says, "Why are you alone and no one with you?" And he makes a good excuse. "The king charged me with a matter and said to me, Let no man know anything concerning the matter upon which I am sending you and with which I have charged you." So he also said, "And I sent the men ahead." So he tells a lie. And he asks, "What do you have? Do you have 5 loaves of bread? Give them to me, or whatever you got." And the priest says, "Oh, there's no ordinary bread, but I do have holy bread. If your guys have not been in contact with women, they can have it." And David says, "Oh, well, women are withheld from us as of yesterday and the day before yesterday when I left. And the young men's garments are hallowed, and that is a matter common." That is in a manner common. So even then, it would all be holy, basically. They're totally clean. Everything's holy. And the priest gives him the sacred bread, and because there was nothing else, and except for the showbread. So this is basically the bread that was put as an offering for the Lord, and they replaced it with new holy bread. So this is the old showbread. This is the old floor model from yesterday's showing or whatever. They've replaced it since with a warm loaf of bread. Now here we have the answer. This is for you. You can take this. And so he then asks, "Do you have any weapons?" And it says here, also there was a man of Saul's servants on that day detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, chief of Saul's shepherds. So this is a note of him being here. Keep this in mind. I'm sure this will be relevant later. In any case, he asks Ahimelech if there is a weapon or something. Do you have a spear or a sword? Because I don't have mine. I left in a hurry. And the priest tells him, well, we have the sword of Goliath, actually. You are the one who claimed that sword. We've got it wrapped up in the back here. If you want to take it, hey, that's the only one. Go ahead. And so David takes it, and then he goes and he flees, and suddenly he comes before the king of Gath. Now remember, Gath is of where Goliath comes from, right? So he is the king of Goliath's people of the Philistines. And so the bondsman says, is this not David, the king of the land? So he comes face to face with somebody who's tied to all that situation that happened. And, the one that they say kills his 10,000 when Saul only kills thousands. And suddenly David realizes, oh no, this is bad. They cannot figure out who I am. So he does something very, very suddenly, very, very clever, drastic even. He starts acting like he's insane. He changes his speech. So imagine, normally David would be here, David here, like he just starts acting really strange. And he starts pretending to be insane, and he starts drawing on the gate, right? So he starts scribbling like, oh, what's this here? I'm going to doodle. And then he also starts drooling. Like he makes himself look mentally unhinged or unwell. And Achish looks at this guy and he goes, this guy's crazy. What are you wasting my time with this lunatic for? Do I lack lunatic? Do you think I need a lunatic in my house? Am I supposed to take this one? What's the matter with you? So I once heard this when I was younger, that for a situation, people question things like, why do people suffer from insanity or the mentally challenged? Why do they have to face those problems? And I once heard someone say that, this moment where David was able to pretend to not be himself and feign insanity is one such case where that is an explanation for why such conditions exist, is for this deception to have happened. I'm not necessarily thrilled with that explanation, but I always remembered it because it stuck with me when I heard it. That being said, in terms of just playing the fool, literally, David acted like he was crazy or unwell mentally so that people would not realize he was David. That's a very bold strategy, and clearly it worked for him because Achish basically said, David? No, this is just some crazy guy. No, I don't think so. In any case, that's the end of this week's episode of the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2. Thank you so much for listening. Now we've gotten to the beginning of David's flight for freedom and survival, and it will surely continue on the morrow. But until then, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast saying thank you for listening, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Until then, remember not to make any covenants, and as always, Baruch Hashem.